All right. Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the PMR Podcast. My name is Mitch. I'm an addict alcoholic.
I'm Andrew. I'm an addict. Happy to be here.
And second episode, and we upgraded a little bit. I got this mic, and I broke the stand. So I'm going to hold it. I feel like this is a comfortable spot right here. We'll see. But I wanted to give a big shout out to Steve-O. Because he produced everything for us, and we got a lot of love from him or for him, and everybody was like, it looked mad good, and it does look extremely good. So very thankful for you. But Andrew, I wanted to ask you, how'd you feel about the first one? And what kind of reactions did you get?
First of all, shout to Steve-O. Never met Steve-O. Definitely gotta chop it up with Steve-O soon. But I honestly, this man's working miracles with my 10-year-old Dell laptop computer. Somehow making it look presentable. Man. So appreciate that, Steve-O, and might have to upgrade the mic too. Mitch making me look bad out here.
No.
But yeah, man, the first episode was, first of all, dude, it flew by. When I think about us recording that, I was nervous, obviously, but we did that. And number one, we really did it in one take. We just went all the way through.
Yeah.
And number two, between us starting and you telling me hey, shut up, we should probably end this thing. I thought that was 5 minutes, man. I looked up and it had been an hour. Yeah. So that's just goes to show how powerful this has been for me. Even one episode in is I need to talk about this type of stuff to keep me sober, and I'm just mad grateful for it. The first video, it's tough for me to listen to my own voice, right? So I tried to suffer through and listen, because I get mad embarrassed listening to myself speak. But you know what, we got some great input and reaction, I think, from the first video. I hope to continue to grow it like we've been talking about, pre-recording this. But a lot of people were really thankful that we told our stories in such almost a really raw and authentic way. I had family members reach out that, maybe didn't know a lot of the behind the scenes feelings and emotions that I was going through. And this is stuff that we're going to dive into deeper on this podcast, which I'm real excited about. But I also had friends reach out and people who are struggling themselves, and that was really empowering for me, because that's exactly what we want to do. We said this right when we decided to do this. We're like, hey, if we can get one person that says, hey, this has allowed me to maybe look at my own addiction a little bit clearer and maybe help someone on their road to recovery, that is everything to me. That fills my heart with joy, with gratitude, with thankfulness. So yeah, I was blown away by the response we got, and it just inspired me to want to get back in here and do it again. We got 300 plus views with little to no promotion, which is amazing, I think. Which is well beyond what I expected. And yeah, man, I'm excited to be back in and to do it again, man. What did you think? What happened on your end?
I completely agree with you. I think that I know we've been saying grateful a lot, and sometimes that's jarring to people, because it's shut the fuck up, you can't be that grateful. But we are, I am too. I'm so excited. Every day I'm this is dope. I also need to stop saying dope. So if we should get a dope counter. That was one. So I'm going to try to keep it under 5.
Good luck.
Thank you. But I'm excited every day for it. And the reactions of the first one were awesome. But like you were saying, like people reaching out and stuff, I think I mentioned it in the last video, but doing something like this where we're talking about stuff that usually is behind closed doors, talking about stuff that is just not common to see. Like you hear stories and stuff, but most of it's like, okay, like keep that to yourself. Which I've been told before. And it just never sat well with me. So I'm happy, grateful to have you with me on this little journey we're about to do. And it is crazy to see when people reach out, because even when I first got sober and I wasn't talking about it and I wasn't posting about it, I went back to Denison just by people knowing that I was sober. I would be at parties. My first interaction with it was at some parties and stuff, and people would come up to me. I don't know if you've had this experience yet, but come up to me like drunk and be like, "Hey man, that's dope that you got sober." And then kind of we dive into a storytelling back and forth. And I've had that happen out at like bars and stuff going forward. If someone offers me a drink, usually I'll say like, no, thank you. And if it keeps coming up, I'll be like, oh, I don't drink. I used to say I don't drink anymore, but now I just say I don't drink. Because when I said I don't drink anymore, that was opening the door for them to be like, oh, why not?
Yeah.
So now I just say I don't drink. But if it keeps coming, sometimes, I mean, I've had a couple instances actually where people have pressed me on it. I don't know if you've ran into that, but that is very rare. Yeah. But I say all that just to say that I think it's awesome that we're like opening ourselves up to be able to talk about it. And if that helps anybody, that'll be dope. There's another, that's two. But
that's two, boy.
The thing that we were talking about over text and on the phone was people we're reaching out after we did the first one, and they were saying like, what's your goal? And like, what do you guys want to do with all of this? And it was pretty simple to us from the beginning what our goal was. But I wanted to see like, or if you could explain that to us, what our goal is.
I mean, and this is a kind of a funny topic, right? About some of the texts we got, but I mean, we said it right from the beginning. We said it over the phone before we even kind of created this idea. Like, I'm doing this for me. I'm like, I'm selfish. Like, I need to stay sober another day, bro. I need another 24. And this is a meeting, like whatever you want to call it, NAAA, whatever vehicle of recovery, like this podcast, this just back and forth with you is keeps recovery on the forefront of my brain. And if it does that, then again, that's another day that I can notch under my belt. Like, so planning this and organizing this and working with you, like that's something that keeps me sober. And that's I mean, almost above anything else in my life, like that's my goal. And I think jointly that's our goal. And the other thing that we kind of just talked about is we are doing this so that maybe one person out of the couple hundred that listened to that first episode heard something that was useful for them in some sort of struggle that they're having.
Right.
And if that's all that happened is one person heard something that was going to positively affect their life, then I've reached my goal with what I'm trying to accomplish in doing this with you. And it's funny to see, and you can go into some of the questions we got, how other people are kind of perceiving it, and just kind of how different our outlook is on the whole point of this thing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I completely agree. I think when I first was getting into talking about my recovery, because I didn't talk too much about it in the first like 6 or so months. But when I got back to school, through talking with my coach asked me, because I had been let back on the swim team, he asked me to speak to the team about where I was and what I had done. That was nerve-wracking, but I wanted to emphasize, and I've always tried to double down, emphasize this, that I don't walk around with like a big book, which for those that know, it's like the AA textbook. I don't walk around with like a big book and be like, you have a problem, read this. Like I've known through my experience that if anyone comes to you and they're like, you have a problem, I think you need to do this, it doesn't work too well. You need to come from a understanding, like shared experience lane, I feel is the best way to connect with someone. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're not trying to push any we're not trying to push any singular way to recover. We're not trying to push any like ideas. We're just sharing how we've done it to this point, and it changes every day. I find different ways to help keep me clean and sober every day. And I always like the idea of like you were just saying, just planting a seed. You know what I mean? And let that grow naturally in whoever it needs to grow naturally in. Like that's all it really takes. I mean, and then when we talked about this too in the last one, it's a personal decision to stop drinking and drugging anyways. So I mean, it doesn't matter what we do or what anyone else says. You know, if we share something that you think you might want, then that's for you. You know what I mean?
Take it.
Yeah, exactly. So
use it.
In terms of goal, there's no money goal, there's no fame goal, the goal is for him and I to stay sober, and for anyone listening, if they can get anything out of listening, for their own recovery or not recovery. I mean, we don't just talk about recovery stuff. That would be dope.
That's 3.
That would be great. That would be great.
I mean,
real but quick, yeah, that's wanted to just get that more out of the way and talk about that exclusively, just so everyone knows like where we're headed, what we're trying to do. And we're also learning as we go. Like I bought this mic, but I broke the stand. So maybe next time I'll have a stand. Maybe next time I won't have a mic. We'll see. But for today, we did want to try to key in on specifically talking about the first time we used, and the first time we used and it felt like, I really like that. Like the first time we fell in love with that feeling. So I'd like to hear about yours.
Yeah, man. We talked about this before we recorded, and like it's a wild memory. It's something that like honestly I still carry with me day to day. I don't know. Again, part of the strength of this podcast, I think, is that you have we're the same age and you have a few more years than I do. So like we're at the same place in our recovery, but we're also in different places in terms of just general like length of how long we've been sober. And I only say we're the same place in our recovery because we're just trying to do this shit one day at a time.
Yeah. Like, yeah. And I don't want to cut you off too much, but my favorite thing that I've ever heard, and I have to say it because every time this comes up, I have to say it. The first person to get up has the longest stint.
Yeah.
That's my favorite, bro.
How does that factor in on the West Coast though? Because like I'm 3 hours ahead.
I'm never in first place. That's how it
factors in. All right.
I'm never in first place.
Fair enough.
Which is annoying because I used to love, and I still do love first place.
Yeah, me too. So yeah, that's important for me to remember. But I mean, that first time, it's funny because like thinking back, like, right. And we talked about this too. Like I had been smoking for quite a few years before I really felt like that deep relief. Like, and I was getting high pretty often, pretty much every day.
Yeah.
in high school, and you know, mostly just smoke a weed and whatever. But it's a distinct moment in my head that I all of a sudden felt like this massive relief. I had just gotten a surgery on my leg. I broke my leg junior year of high school, which is a whole nother subject that we could talk about. But I was a captain of the basketball team, and 2 days before the first game of the season, I broke my leg, and it devastated me. Number one, right? Made me think I let everybody down. Made me think I was a failure. A lot of emotions going into that. I was already used to weed, but I hadn't dabbled in anything else yet, and they gave me a pretty hefty prescription for oxycodone, right? And I had never used this in tandem with weed, and so they gave it to me, right? And that immediate, like, you know, I'm taking it, but I'm taking it as prescribed, and I have a broken leg, so it's not really making me high. It's helping me deal with the pain, but it wasn't really doing whatever, you know. It wasn't creating the feeling that I would subsequently chase for the next, you know, 8 years or so. It was doing what it's supposed to do. And we can spend a whole episode on prescription medications and opiate prescriptions in general, because that's a little bit of a touchy subject for me. But
Yeah.
I saved a couple pills and hid them because I was like, these things, there's something about these things, and I want to do a little exploration.
Yeah. Just a little.
Yeah. And that's like that, you know, that's the, you know, not the beginning, right? Because I was an addict, and a lot of people say this. I was an addict before I was using. Like, I was lying and stealing and cheating way before I was using drugs. And that's just another little example of me stealing, because, you know, it's got my name on the prescription, but I know this is wrong. I can feel it in my heart. Like, I shouldn't be holding these pills. Like, I shouldn't be saving these, like, for a later date. Like,
Right.
this is not correct. And, you know, I saved them, and eventually I became a little bit more mobile. My legs started to heal. I transitioned out of the crutches. I'm walking in a boot, so now I have a little bit more freedom to, like, go places without, you know, my parents driving me or whatever. And right around this time is like a perfect storm. I got introduced to something called a dab, right? And so it was a Friday night, I remember, and I was at a friend's house. It was in between seasons. Leg was healing up just fine. You know, I wasn't doing myself any favors with my habits at this point. You know, I'm not really taking the recovery too seriously. I'm doing what I need to do to be able to play sports, but that was pretty much it. You know, my buddy of mine was like, "Hey, you want to try this?" I said, "What is it?" He says, "It's weed." I said, "It sure doesn't look like weed." He just told me it's, you know, very concentrated or whatever. And, you know, perfect storm, right? I had saved, you know, 3 of those pills, and I took them, and then I took a dab, and that feeling of comatose, just that, like, synergy of an opiate and THC, like a lot of THC. It did something to my brain that you know, that marijuana had never done singularly.
Yeah.
It allowed me to, like, to go into a vacuum, there was nothing. Like there were no thoughts. Like it wasn't that I just deleted the bad and kept the good, because there was a lot of bad thoughts in there, a lot of like self-pity, self-hatred, judgment, comparison with others, you know, that hamster wheel of questioning, do I belong here? Like, is that girl looking at me? You know, how do I look right now? All that like self-centered bullshit.
Right.
And the combination of those two things, man, I can remember the feeling clear as day. Like all of a sudden, everything was gone. Like it was an empty head, and that's what I wanted for so many years. Because as an addict, I thought for a long time, and still sometimes struggle with this thought, like that I'm broken. Like I came out of the factory fucking defective. Like I you know, somebody in the assembly line really screwed up like something when they were putting me together.
Yeah, I missed the part.
And this brain can't, you know, regulate its thoughts, limit its thoughts, you know, calm down in any way, shape, or form without some sort of external help. And I, you know, again, I'm not discounting that for a lot of people with, you know, medical conditions, this is true. Like this is something that can be properly prescribed, I believe. But again, this is just me as an addict,
right?
You know, with these type of spiraling thoughts. And I just remember sitting in a chair that whole night, almost like in a recliner, and I felt like a sage Buddha. Like I was like, I can't feel any of my, you know, extremities. My head is in the clouds. I had no social anxiety, and I think the other thing that kept me on that path too, and was like a ticker in my head that was like, we should do this again, is that I didn't have any consequences that first time. I didn't get in any trouble. Like, right. If anything, I had a better night, you know. Right. I you know, I interacted with people in a more relaxed way than usual, and I didn't get in any trouble with, you know, with my parents, you know, and I went on my merry way, dude. And that feeling, we'll go into it, you know, later this episode too. It, you know, that's the feeling I chase, bro. That nothingness,
right? That
void, that just like not like a unsettling or lonely nothingness, but like a calm, dark blanket. Like, okay, like everything's gonna be okay. I'm nice and warm, and I don't have to think or worry about what's gonna happen because I know it's all gonna work out.
Yeah.
And it's straight external. Like there was nothing in my head that was creating these feelings. It was simply a chemical input, like from an outside source. And yeah, dude, that's what it was like. That's what it was like for me, man. What about you?
Yeah. I can't relate more, to be honest. I think my first one was also weed. It wasn't a dab, but it was called a Jeeb. Are you familiar?
GB. Yeah, just a little.
Yeah. GB.
Listen, we went to school in Central Ohio. All right, that's like the most sophisticated way people smoke out there.
That's right. It'll take over your life. But a lot of what you were saying, the quietness, for sure. I think I also I had a big drive to be, like you were saying, feeling like something was off. I had a really big I'm other complex that I'm still working on. But you know, I was an only child with just my mom growing up, and still, and so I always put a lot of stock into friends and groups and image. I remember there was a significant turn in middle school where I was like looking at like the popular group or whatever, and I was like, I need to be in that. And I associated that with, well, they drank, they smoked, You know, they partied, they didn't care, they made fun of people, they bullied people. So I took note of all of that, and I was like, all right, I can do that. And I went from being like, I think I was a nice kid when I was like 4th, 5th, 6th grade. And then like a turn in 7th and 8th grade to like manipulating, bullying, cheating, stealing, started drinking, started smoking, and started moving up that pedestal in popularity and group and stuff. And I loved it.
Oh yeah.
Because that made me feel a part of something, which I had never felt a part of anything. Something that made me feel a part of something even more was smoking with all the boys. So the first, like, not the first time, but I think it might have been the first time I smoked, actually, or one of the initial times. I hit my boys had been smoking already, so they packed up like a crazy Jeep, you know, as you do to the first person when you smoke them up, you try to kill them. They tried to kill me, and they did. And like, it was funny, you're talking about a recliner. I was on a recliner, hit that and just sat back, and I was like, oh yeah. Like, I couldn't even, I mean, I couldn't, you know, like the classic, like I couldn't get up, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do any of that. But in my head, I was like, this is what I've been looking for. Because even when I was in those groups, you know, day-to-day stuff, like hanging out with them or whatever, not fucked up, I still had the social anxiety. I still felt like I wasn't, I mean, we'd all be hanging out and I would have been invited over or whatever. And I still felt like, you know, no one wants me here, or like those girls don't like me, or like, you know, they probably are here for him. But that type of shit, that's part of that negative self-talk has been there from the beginning. And that also, that first high eliminated not only the negative self-talk, but all the self-talk.
Yeah, it's all gone.
It was like, it's bliss, right? Like, what's better than that? You know what I mean? And the progression of that is like, now I'm hitting those twice on the weekend. Now I'm hitting those once during the week. Now I'm hitting those 4 out of 7 days. You know what I mean? Now I need to hit 2 Jeebs, because one Jeeb I'm like a comfortable high, right? And you know, they talk about like chasing that high forever. You know, each drug brings a different high to an extent. Each drug brings a different bliss to an extent too. That blackout drunk for me was like different than being high. Like when I was like super, super high, I just liked the closing my eyes type thing. The blackout drunk thing was, I'm going to keep drinking until I don't know I'm drinking. Like you're pretty much cognizant the whole time. If you're just smoking, you know what's going on. So there's different feelings that I chased, but keeping it on just that first one was definitely that weed, just feeling just that quiet. And everybody else was high around me, and everyone else was having a good time. Looking back, like I was getting clowned, but in the moment I was like, we're all together. You know what I mean? Like this is some real bonding right here. But yeah, I think I agree with you on that. It's tough. Like when we were talking about it on the phone, it was like I was smiling, and I've probably been smiling as I've been saying it, because we still romanticize those memories.
Oh yeah.
I won't forget it. You know what I mean? Which is scary. I think we have to be careful about, not specifically on the podcast, but in our own lives. Like I remember when I first got sober, I was like, my friends would be like, oh, that's crazy, you got sober. Remember when? And I would love that, bro. Like this is giving me fucking chills talking about it because it's tripping me out. But I would love to reminisce. That was like, I was like, let's talk about that one time when I got really whatever.
Oh yeah.
And that's your addiction in the back of your head. Like we got him. We got him a little bit. You know what I mean?
Bro, and it's so sinister. Like
it is.
It like I'm sitting here and it's kind of crazy. Like I've probably been, when I look back and watch this again, I'm gonna be like, God damn it, because I've probably been smiling and laughing like the whole time I'm telling this story, right? And
Yeah.
like you said, like even now for me, I'm just kind of getting over that phase of wanting to look back. Like
Mm.
I sneaky love hanging out with my non-sober friends.
Yep.
Like sometimes now, because I've almost given them permission and like goaded them into like, yo, let's hear those stories. I want to hear how fucked up I was like this
Yep.
time or that time or whatever it is. And
How
dude,
crazy is that?
it's like
I'm the
I
same.
didn't get sober to hear stories of myself like in the middle of a crippling addiction.
Right.
Like, and when I think about it now, it's like, what, why? Why do I want to hear that? And you just said it perfectly. Like my addiction is still sitting in my brain telling me that it's okay to hear these stories and trying to chip away, bro. I think about like how sinister it is, bro. Like, and I use that word in full seriousness, like, cause it is,
Yeah.
it's life or death for me. You know, knowing your story, I think it's life or death for you. Um, and the more that I normalize like joking about it or romanticizing when I used to get high, or even looking back on it like fondly, like I'm not gonna say for myself that I can't look back at the past and at least appreciate some of the experiences I had. You know what I mean? I don't need to go as far to say like that the whole first part of my life like was a waste. You know, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna say that. In the midst of all that using and active addiction and self-hatred and, you know, not being my full true self, there were some memorable experiences, sure. Um, but the thing about it is because I'm a black and white thinker, right? I think something is either 100% good or 100% bad. That when I get in my head and start romanticizing using in those past days, like my brain will create a narrative that, oh, it was all good, man.
Right.
Like it was all good. And that's wicked dangerous because eventually, like talking about that sculptor, like my addiction is the sculptor and it's trying to chisel away at my brain and slowly knock away like the protections that I've built up and the routines and the program that I've built up, to get back into that place of loneliness and despair and putting my guard down and thinking that I can do drugs in safety, which I cannot.
Mm.
So like, just like we're saying, thinking about that stuff is useful if we look at it with some honest perspective, but it can be dangerous if I'm thinking about it with that like mind frame of romanticizing and looking back fondly.
Right.
Like, oh, remember the time I got high in so and so's house and this and this and this. Like, and the other thing I think that I see in both of our stories is like that feeling of relief that we got in those first times and subsequently and down the line. Like, there's a lot of history there before we did drugs. Like,
Yes.
there's a lot of baggage of like,
Right.
and I see it in myself and reflected in your story. Like, I love how you talk about how out of place you felt, like, and how much you wanted to be in that group, like that we deemed as popular. Like, dude, I was in love with these kids.
Yeah.
Like, I just wanted to be like so and so because they seemed confident and they had girls and they, you know, had money. We're in fourth grade, for Christ's sakes, and I'm like
Right.
looking at like, oh man, he's got all the girls and
Yeah.
like
Had the
and he drives a
hottest feelings.
convertible, and it's like, bro, his parents have a convertible. Like,
Right.
and we're in 4th grade. Like, ain't nobody had girls. Like, and that's exactly what I do is I romanticize, and I look like I want that. I want whatever they have. They seem to be confident, and they seem to have it all figured out, and they seem to have a place in society. Like, and I, being competitive, I'm like, that's what I need to have. I need to be better. Like, and it appears that that's the way that I need to achieve it.
Yeah.
And it's no fault on anyone, like on the people who were popular. It's absolutely no knock on anybody else but myself, because of how inadequate I felt.
Yeah.
And those feelings like build up and up and up and up and well up so big inside of my chest and my heart and everything that I do, that when that first like real drug experience happens, like we just described, like that's the relief that we get. Like, we escape those feelings that have been building up for years of trying to be, honestly, like somebody that I'm not.
Right.
Trying to fit into a mold. And the crazy thing about people like us, and I'm not calling myself a genius by any stretch, but by and large, I've found a lot of the people who are like us are pretty damn smart, like, and self-aware. Like, I was aware while I'm trying to fit in and doing all these things, like engaging in bullying and dishonesty and stealing, like, that this is not aligned with my moral compass.
Right.
Like, this is, say this is my morals, like I'm operating outside that realm, and it's very uncomfortable because my heart is like telling me, dude, this isn't who you are. Like, this isn't what Andrew Staley believes in.
Yeah.
And again, when we get to the point of doing drugs, that's part of the relief. It's like, oh, I already judge myself because I know I'm doing these things that are not part of who I am, to fill some void inside of me, because I feel like I'm a part of, like, outside of. Now I feel connected with people, but I know I achieved that through some like fake bullshit means. And I feel real shitty about myself because of this. And I want to feel relief, man. I just need, like, this is the hamster wheel of like, who am I? What am I doing to achieve popularity? Like, and it just, and that's where that chase starts, dude. I'm like, I need to shut everything up in here.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. We're talking a lot about escape and relief and bliss, and I'm sure some people listening are like, from what? You know what I mean? And that was an interesting thing for me to understand once I got sober was, once I can't drown out that stuff is trauma. That stuff is relationships, not, family relationships, friend relationships early on. I had a big issue with trust. It starts from a lot of other deep ingrained stuff, like when you're a kid or growing up. And honestly, there's a lot of self-inflicted wounds. Even when that addiction starts, it's like you might have been semi-damaged or something was semi-wrong. But once you add in the drugs to self-medicate, because that's what it is, then you start adding in more trauma. You start doing more messed up things. And now you have that to think about. And it just snowballs crazy. And the crazy part about getting sober when we have is that we're both speaking on, I want to be a part of something. I feel other. Guess what? We just put ourselves into a position where there's not many other people that are our age that are sober. So guess what? We're other again.
Oh yeah.
Except on the other side, right?
Yeah.
And I did not enjoy that early on because I was sitting in my room at Denison a year. I got my 1 year coin in November. So I was back at school. I was sitting in my room and I was like, I don't know, any of the weekends really. You could pick any, but let's just say it was like the first or second weekend, right? Everyone's out partying because everyone's back at school. And I was like, I feel other again. You know what I mean? I feel alone again.
Mm.
So that's why when like, meeting you and having met other people in recovery and stuff that are younger, that helps me feel like, oh shit, like this is someone that's going through this as well at the same time, same feelings. You know what I mean? That feels good.
Yeah.
So I think that's why us talking like this can give that opportunity to someone else that's thinking about it or that's recently got into it, because it's like you're not by yourself.
And the beautiful thing about this is that it's like, I agree with you that it's almost ironic that like we did this work, we're doing this work, and we've been sober, we're young, and it feels sometimes that like, why, I just, I got sober, like for what? Like I'm alone again. Like where's my community? But like this and other relationships is like, oh shit, like this is real. This is a real, like I don't have to fake anything
Right.
with you. Like I just tell you what I went through and you tell me what you went through and we're bonded. Like we have and I feel this for real. This is something that is, I mean, maybe I have, like, we're going to have to compare class notes, but like, what blows my mind is I have never shook your hand.
Right.
I've never met you face to face. Like we spent
Yeah.
4 years together at a university, like with you isolating in your room trying to stay sober and me isolating in my room trying to get higher. And like I feel connected to you in a way that I don't feel like, and not a knock on my other friends or friends that I made it, outside of recovery, but
Yeah.
like I feel connected with you in a way that is much deeper than that kind of superficial, like, yeah, we'll just do drugs together or we party together. Like this is real.
100%. I couldn't
Yeah.
agree with you more, bro. I could not agree with you more. Those using friends that we had and stuff, we talked on the phone. I don't know if it was the last time we did, but that connection that we had with using friends and stuff like that, how fast did that fade when you got sober? For a lot of them. I'm not saying all of them. But I remember I was in rehab. And my therapist in rehab was like, next week, we're going to go through your phone. And I was like, for what? We're not going through my phone. And she was like, we're going to delete videos, pictures, and contacts.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, but no. So the next week came around, and I think the first time we tried it, I knew what pictures we would delete and stuff, some like egregious videos and stuff, but there was ones I was proud of that I was not trying to let go of. And there was friends that, my drug dealer at the time, we deleted him. But I had others. It's not like I just had one drug dealer or one friend that could get me drugs. Right. And we went on like Instagram and stuff and unfollowed and stuff like that. But not everybody. And the crazy part about that is, and I'm not trying to bash this person, but one of my best friends when I was using at Denison, I love this kid, bro, for real. I really do. But we were heavy users together. Mostly him and I mostly just smoked together. I would run off and do my other stuff on my own. But we drank together too and stuff. But when I came back sober, bro, he didn't say one thing to me.
Yeah, bro. I mean, that's when we learn like who our friends are, like who really cares.
Yeah, that shit, like, to be honest, bro, that shit really fucked me up
I believe it, dude.
because like I was like, damn. And someone had told me, and I still don't know if this is true, so this will just be hearsay, but I had heard that he said, you know, when Mitch comes back, he'll jump back in. And I know he didn't mean that in a messed up way. That was like, you know, like a using thing to say, like he'll come back. And that really like, I don't know, that messed me up about him and we never talked about it. But the more I think about it, in terms of like a good friend, we never had a conversation below right here while we were using, while we were best friends. I mean, everybody was like, you all, if you see one, Mitch is probably there. Or if you see him, or, you know, we were always together. But we did not have conversations past like, I'm high as shit, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's all that mattered.
Yeah. But the whole process of cutting off those friends and stuff, it's not even cutting off, bro. It's like, this is my new journey. And if you want to be here with me, please do. But if you don't, no hard feelings. And the friends that I have kept through it are like, we'll all be at my wedding, you know, we'll all be like, I'll be like pushing them over in my wheelchair when I'm 90. You know what I mean? Those will be my guys for life, because that meant so much for me, for them to stick around and like hold it down like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't say it better. Like, and this is no knock on some of the boys or whatever, like they're going to do their thing.
Yeah. And it's an awkward position for them to be in, to be honest.
Exactly.
Like, it's very weird. I couldn't tell you how he felt.
I mean, I went from being a junkie, you know, like how high can we get today and tomorrow and the next day and every day, and like enabling and co-signing and doing all of the things that like allowed addictive use to continue, to being like, nah, we shutting it down. Like, I don't do any of this stuff. And unfortunately, what happens is like, I didn't want to be friends with people who were going to limit my use. Like in college, like I didn't, and I thankfully have some friends who have stuck with me through this journey, who somehow slipped through the cracks and actually had level heads, like, and we're like, yo, maybe we don't, you know, do this or that, you know, on a Tuesday morning, you know, maybe you go to class instead. And like, people who try to talk sense into me. But the thing is I actively tried to associate like myself with people who wanted to do the same things I did. And so again, it's almost not even, it's not like I'm saying I don't fuck with you anymore, I don't want to see you. Right. It's almost like, listen, we don't do the same shit, dude. Like, right. We are not like, I don't do what you do anymore, and you don't do what I do, and that's all right. But I you know, a relationship based on using drugs together, it isn't going to be, you know, a good one, sustainable. Yeah, especially when we don't do that shit anymore, bro. But yeah, I did want to ask, in the interest of time, you know, the next kind of portion of our segment today is about, okay, so we talked about that first relief, right? And we talked about how we felt and what we're running from and all of that, almost that nothingness that you talk about. And so now, and it's interesting, and I'm gonna let you comment on it, but how did that, you know, lead into it, and how does it contrast with it, and how did the first moments and the first realizations that, oh shit, like Mitch might have a problem, you know, how did those feelings kind of compare to that first feeling of relief? And like, how did that whole kind of scenario play out when those thoughts started to bubble up, bro?
Yeah. That's a wild question. And just to finish up the other part real quick,
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
talked about this, but the friends conversation, friends and family is like a whole nother episode. So I'm
Oh
glad we
yeah.
got to talk about it a little bit, but that's a
That
whole
shit's
other
a
thing.
whole nother series,
That's a
bro.
whole nother series. But what you were saying on that first time, I think I might have had a problem. When we were talking on the phone, it was like, and we said this already, we could easily pinpoint the first time we liked it. I still haven't really been able to pinpoint the first time I thought I had a problem, other than when like I went to rehab. And the reason for that is like our denial ability was disgusting. At least I know mine was. Like, I could be, you could cut off my leg and someone would be like, Mitch, like your leg's gone. And I'd be like, no, it isn't. And I would say, I would look at you in the eyes and say, no, it isn't. Also, go fuck yourself. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I was spiteful. I was angry. I was like denial to the max. And
Mhm.
so the question of like, when was the first time you thought you might have had a problem? I probably questioned that every single time I used. And it was met with immediate shove down, immediate. No, you don't. Immediate, like very strong. Like my addiction in its full bloom was like, nothing's getting in. Like the best defense ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And the
bro.
things that spur those, the things that for me spurred it, and you talked about this the first time you said no consequences. I thought that was dope because there's another dope. Well, it's only four.
That's
The first time the consequence thing was that I have found from working with other people and myself and hearing other stories that consequences have the highest likelihood to spur change in an addict. Nothing's 100%. We know that, but I had a buildup of consequences through high school into college that accelerated it for me. But I would say at each of those instances, I remember I would say the first real time I thought I had a problem was my freshman year. I took my roommate's car and I was drunk and I was going to McDonald's. We had just found out who made the national team for swimming. So I celebrated with drinking, even though it was dry season. And I drove his car. I couldn't figure out how to turn his lights on. And you know how the Granville police are. They're licking their lips. Anytime a
oh
car
yeah.
leaves campus after 12 o'clock, they're like, you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
they love that
They're
shit.
there. I got pulled over because I couldn't turn on the lights because I'm an idiot. And we went back and forth for a long time. I had been drinking hours earlier, so this should have been a DUI 100%. But I was so proud of this, bro. And I used to tell this story with such pride, and now I'm telling it with shame. Not shame, but I'm not proud of it. I had just watched a video on how to beat a breathalyzer, and some of this shit is so stupid. But I also knew that you could call another officer to the scene, so I dragged it on with this officer for a long time, and did all the tests, failed the eye one, and so I got turned around, and because I refused the breathalyzer, and then I refused it a bunch, and then I did, and then I blew it, and it was above the legal limit. I was also 19, so it was above the legal limit. And I got put in handcuffs and put into the back of a police car, and they closed the door, and that is probably when I was like, oh fuck. Because I had been cited or arrested, whatever you want to say, for marijuana a couple times, and I've run away from police a bunch of times in high school, tons of times in high school. We had close calls, but handcuffs in the back of the car at like 2 a.m. on a weekday for a DUI, I was like, I started crying, bro. I started crying crazy in that car.
Man, I would have too.
Yeah, and the most messed up part about that whole story is they took me back to the Granville Station, which is more like a saloon.
Yeah.
And I passed the breathalyzer on the station there. I was below the legal limit because I had waited long enough, and I learned that if you blew slowly and whatever, I'm not going to give anyone tips out there that needs them, but I passed it. So they could only cite me with a minor in consumption. So I didn't get a DUI. And I went from crying like a little boy. Like when I tell you I was breakdown crying, it was me and this cop in a breathalyzer machine, and I was begging him to let me go.
Yep.
Breakdown crying. That switched from when he said, "Oh, like you're good." They just wrote me a citation. I ran up the hill because they took the car. I banged on my door of my using buddy at the time. It's like 2:30 in the morning. Proud, bro.
Oh yeah.
Pride.
That's a war story, baby.
I just beat the breathalyzer, bro. I just got out of a DUI. Like, let's smoke. Everybody was asleep. He was like, I woke him up. He's like, no, bro, like go to bed. But the moment from all of that was in that car. That was the first one. First real one, which is crazy. It took that long to get to that. But like first real defenses down, I have a problem.
It's the consequences, right?
Yeah. And it was just nuts to see how fast I just flipped it. And then I
Oh,
lied
yeah.
to everyone and said, like, you know, I had to go talk to my coach after that. And I was like, oh, I wasn't drunk. I was packing a lip. And like, that's what caused me to spike the machine. The machine was wrong. You know, no one believed it. But I got away with that. And I went to nationals like 4 weeks later and won a national championship. And that, and you know, that's another thing that co-signed all that behavior because I didn't get in trouble with my team, you know. But yeah, I think that was
that's the sick part, bro, is the more we succeed on the field or in the pool, the less accountable we are for our actions off the field, right? Like,
yes, sir.
That's the sick part, right? But I mean, I feel I can identify, like when that door closes, bro, in the back of the cop car, and it kind of gets quiet,
bro, dead quiet,
and you're like, oh, dude, like. What the fuck?
It just got real.
Yeah. Because it's all a show until then. It's all like,
that's so
I'm
true.
trying to show this man I'm not drunk. I haven't been drinking. He's an idiot.
Yeah,
like,
I'm smart. I can outsmart
you are doing me wrong right now. Like you're being an asshole cop.
Yes.
Like I'm not breaking the law. And if I am breaking the law, like
I'm allowed to.
I'm me. I'm allowed to. Like you're a bad cop is what it comes down to. Bro. Like, which is wild.
100%.
Which is a wild thought. Like, and yeah, I mean, it's funny because like the timing of that, what was that? You know, your freshman year?
Yeah, 2019, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So 2019? No, that would have been like.
No, I'm bugged out. 2016.
Yeah, okay. So that's 2016. And you got to Denison a year before me, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's 2016. So that's like a year, like a semester before I get there, right?
Right.
And it's funny because my first, like say, signpost in AA or whatever they say, right? Like, oh, like maybe you should turn around, idiot. Like, right.
I've never heard that. That's actually amazing.
Oh, that shit's actually mad funny. Like
that is very funny. Maybe
people talk about seeing mad signposts. Yeah, I mean
that's good. I like that.
And I actually just thought of my moment, right? Because again, like it's wild how quickly I can romanticize and remember like all the cool feelings of relief and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to start thinking about like the bad times, and I'm like, man, that's just locked away.
Yeah,
you know, I locked that shit. I locked that shit in a file cabinet. I threw away the key. Like we didn't open that, right? And I mean, when I think about it, you know, and the wild thing is in high school, like again, like I had no consequences besides personal like self-worth consequences. I didn't get in trouble there. I had nothing to show for it. The police never got involved. Like I had nothing.
Hmm.
And I rolled into Denison thinking I was the man.
Yep.
Like, I can use and smoke and do anything. And I never get in trouble.
Hmm.
Like, I could still perform everywhere, school, the lacrosse field, whatever. And fall break, if you remember fall break, it's a weird time. It's like it's the middle of October or something. Like,
Yeah.
it's like 4 days off. A lot of people go home. And of course, me being me, right? Like, my parents were like, yeah, we could fly you home, blah, blah, blah. We'll have a nice. I was like, fuck that. Like, I'm staying on campus. There's not gonna be nobody around. I can isolate and do whatever I want for 4 days. And I remember, I was hooked up with some upperclassmen at this point, because that's what we do, is we seek out people like us who have access.
I couldn't. Yeah. All my best friends for the first year were seniors.
Yep, access, bro. I needed access, and
Yeah.
I got access. I remember, like, I made a purchase that had me a little goodie bag.
Hmm.
For a lot of different substances, man. There were pills and powder and tabs and whatever, and I had tried these things at this point, through that first semester, but I hadn't really dove in, like, head first, and I still had that little, like, quiet voice from my mother and from all those, like, around me growing up, that was like, don't use a power, don't sniff cocaine, and don't get into the pills, like,
Yeah.
it's a dark road, and all of that. But I was dabbling, and something switched in my head, right? Like, again, we had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, and I think that Wednesday, people are packing up to leave, and, like, I'm thinking of, like, all the stuff I have, like, to get. And I'm like, dude, like, I can really get into something here. And it's like, it's a wild thought. Like,
Yeah.
I'm more excited about that than, like, the potential to go play, like, the University of Michigan in a
Right.
lacrosse, like, exhibition game in a couple weeks after that. Like, I was more excited about being alone in a dorm room, consuming drugs at a level that I hadn't before. And I remember a little bit of that first night, but it bled into the next day, right? And I'm, like, playing the alchemist, like, keeping myself awake just enough, and all this just ridiculous playing with my life. Really, I didn't know it at the time, but
Yeah.
bleeds into the next day, and it just keeps going for hours, and I don't really know what day it happened, but eventually, like, I truly lose the ability to remember and any cognitive function, and I don't have any idea what happened, but I woke up the next morning, I think either in Whistler, which is the little university hospital, or, like, in Licking County Memorial. I honestly, it's so foggy, that memory, that I could have been either. I think I started in Licking, and they brought me back to Whistler, because I still had, like, my blood was not looking clean.
Right.
And I don't know what I did that night. I don't know what I did for those days. It's a mystery to me. But I had cuts and bruises and scratches, and my hands were still, like, white, because apparently I had slept outside and it got really cold, and like, there was a lot of, like, question marks. I had text messages from random people I had never met before, like, saying, "Oh, dude, you were so fucked up," like, and I was like, I can't piece it together.
That's wild.
And so I'm thinking all this, and I'm trying to put everything in my head, and it's all like, it's just overwhelming, right? And then I get a call while I'm sitting in Whistler, like waiting to be discharged. Because of course, like the great me, I'm like, all right, well, nothing really happened here. I don't see me getting in trouble. Like, first I get a call from the hospital about an ambulance bill, which is great. This is a hefty one. And then I get a call from my coach. And you know the feeling.
Yes,
like,
sir.
And he's talking like, we got this information from the university last night. Like and that was the first consequence that I had. Like, oh shit. Like, it's almost like my coach opened Pandora's box, right?
Yeah.
And like, I was almost like, coach, you don't want to go down this road. Like,
Right.
you don't want to know where this is and where this is. Like and I remember I was doing pretty well at the time. I was, people were abroad, things were in flux, but at the time I was starting on the team, and my ass got moved to the bottom of that depth chart so quickly, like the bottom, rightly so. And we had that trip to Michigan, like once in a lifetime opportunity to go up to Ann Arbor and play like against a really solid D1 team. Like, I wasn't allowed on that trip. I was suspended for a few months from the team, from team activities. Like, all of a sudden it was real. I was like, oh my God. Cause up to this point, right, we have this like facade in our brain that
Delusion,
we're two people, that like we can lead this one life of just like debauchery and addiction and disgusting behavior, but we can also keep this other life publicly of like student athlete, like reputable individual.
Yeah.
And that's the first time those wires crossed, dude. Like, all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, like I can't hide this anymore. That was that first time I was like, oh man, like I couldn't stop. But the only thought that I could remember from the night and the nights previous was more. Like, and that, like you said, it's difficult for me. Like right now I'm having a visceral reaction, like I'm hopping around, like, because it's difficult for me to recall all this because the emotions are so
real
and raw, dude. Like shame and guilt and regret, like, and it's something that we work on coming to peace with. And for us, and for me at least, it's in the steps, like, and however else, getting it out, talking to you. But these emotions are difficult to deal with, man. Like, because this is a moment in my life where I was like, oh my, like, I've let people in on a secret. Like, people know now that Andrew has a problem. And it's crazy because then I spent the next years, the next 6 years, not even hiding it so much as like normalizing it. Like, I think after that, right, and it's different from your experience, right? Because you got sober pretty soon after, this experience in the cop car. Like, if I can, like, right, less than a year after, if I can.
Yeah, about like 9-10 months after that, I went to rehab.
Like, I tried to play this thing off for 6 years after that. Like, and I built a persona of yeah, that's what I do. I use and deal drugs. Like, I almost embraced it because my addiction was like, we're not done here. Like, we're not shutting this down. Any problem that Andrew thinks he has, we're going to mask it in this ultimate confidence in being a drug user and a drug dealer.
Yeah.
Like, and so that's the contrast between that, you know, and that first moment of relief, and just thinking like, and you touched on it too, like the escalation, like between that, like taking one G or one dab or whatever it is, like to where we got to, like you're drinking during dry season, like you could be you could be a national champion, you were a national champion, you are a national champion, but like all of the consequences are out there, like staring at us in the face, and we said, fuck it.
Yep.
Like,
this is more important.
It's the craziest escalation, dude.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But yeah, dude, it's and looking back now, like that's a place I never want to return to.
No.
Is feeling almost like unhinged, like bro, like unanchored, like I'm about to float off the edge here.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I couldn't handle going back, bro. That's like, yeah, the I like to say that I'm an all in, all out person. Feels good saying that, especially if I'm doing good on something. But when it comes to like my recovery, once I got a year, I was terrified of going back. Like, I didn't think that I could fucking mentally handle that. Like, you know, I'm not going to speak too much on relapse right now, but yeah, I don't know. Everything we were saying about that is crazy. It's like somehow or another, we got to a point where that voice in the back, like wanted to get that help enough. So we got to be thankful for that, bro, because from what I know from your story and from what I know from my story, we didn't have that much left. You know what I mean?
No,
we didn't have that much left.
No.
And I used to, and sometimes I'll be lying if I said it doesn't pop in, because on some really weird way, sometimes those things pop in, even if you're doing really well in your recovery. But that, like, dude, you're only yada 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 old. Like, let's run it back.
Run it back.
Yeah. And so, like, I'm so thankful for this, because today especially, we talked a lot about we put ourselves back in two really important times. The first time we loved it, and the first time we started to question it. Which should be a good segue into our next one, talking about those initial days of recovery.
Yeah, dude.
And how that was, and then how getting into recovery at our ages. I think that's what we should think about talking about the next time with some other stuff. But
yeah,
I'm
man,
glad we talked about that today, bro. That I'm going to think about it the rest of the day. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Now that we're sober and stuff, we can put ourselves right back in. Like I when I was talking about the cop car thing, bro, I was in that cop car.
I could see it, bro.
Yeah.
Like you're
like that
pausing. I was like, oh shit, this man is sitting back cuffed right now.
Yeah, bro.
Like,
it's just so visceral.
It is. It's a wild feeling, dude. And again, I think like we have a nice segue into our next episode. Like, it's gonna be wild thinking about those first days. Like, first days clean, because that is, talk about fucking visceral. Like, that's about as raw and visceral as it gets.
Yeah, that's when our addiction was having a daily panic attack.
Yeah, bro.
Like, what is this kid doing? What is this kid doing? No. We were having so much fun. No, we weren't.
Bro, and to highlight the insanity, I heard this in a meeting last night. Like, using or drinking as an alcoholic addict is the same thing, if you think about it, as being a diabetic, grabbing a bag of sugar and saying, you guys want to go have a reaction? Like, It's fucking wild. That's what it is.
That's true,
That's
bro.
what it
It's
is. Like the insanity of it.
Yeah.
Once we come to grips with what we are, like going back out and using it's insane.
Yep.
It's insane, man. But real quick before we end, we did want to talk about having a forum and a vehicle for questions, because I've had some questions pop up, and I think what Mitch and I have kind of decided is that it would be cool, you know, if you're not worried about anonymity. Obviously we're not just going to throw names around on here,
never.
but we if you're not worried about us knowing who you are when you ask a question, like we'd love questions in the, you know, in the PMR Instagram, like DMs. That's a great way to do it. You know, I think we're going to get an email address kind of up and running if you want to have a little more anonymity.
I'll link it to this video too, that email address.
And we talked a little bit too about like potentially having a Twitch, and having the ability to do some anonymous, like, you know, Q&A there. So, you know, anybody watching this, first of all, thanks for watching, but second of all, you know, if you have any suggestions about good ways to have a bit of a Q&A, we're definitely open to suggestions. And and also, you know, as we go forward, I think it'd be a great idea to have a little bit, and we were talking about this, having a little bit of a, like, you know, a 10-15 minute segment at the beginning or the end of videos and episodes to go through some of those questions, if they pertain to both of us. So yeah, just increasing that interaction and giving you guys, the listeners, a chance to ask and have any questions answered. I don't have a lot of answers, I'm just warning you. But
we have our experience on it.
That's it.
That's it.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, you want to add anything else about that?
Yeah, no, completely. You summed it up. Try to get an email going. You can DM us on our actual Instagrams or the PM Recovery Instagram. And I understand remaining anonymous for some people is very important. It was for me initially, for sure. So try to preserve that. It's not going to be, we're not going to pull your name up and like on a share screen to be like, look what yada 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 asked. Also for people that aren't struggling or aren't in recovery, they ask questions too.
Oh yeah.
Because I think something also that, like, yes, it's for Andrew and I to stay sober, and for people more, it's obviously more geared towards people in recovery or thinking about recovery. But I also think that everyone would, it would help if everyone knew more about this too. Just because if you're listening, just casually, if you're a friend of ours, just listening, it's good stuff to know if you run into someone that might need to hear something about what we're talking about. So any questions?
I think everybody knows somebody.
Oh,
everyone knows somebody struggling with addiction.
100%. 100%.
So,
haven't run into one person yet.
No.
Not yet.
So yeah, bro, I think, what do we think? We close it up?
Close it up. Let me see. Let me check my
wrap it up.
Hopefully you guys see that this episode, we tried to streamline it. Not that the first one wasn't, but tried to stay on some topics that directly tied. I thought it was awesome. As always, I was sitting here today earlier, so looking forward to this.
Dude.
Like looking at my clock.
Best part of my week, bro. Best part of my week.
Yeah, for real. Oh, I was going to say, also for everyone, we're going to try to get videos out every Monday. That's going to be the day. And then hopefully maybe throw in some other sort of videos throughout the week as we get more into it. But let's see. Yeah, I think that's everything. But thank you so much to you, Andrew. I appreciate you always. Thank you to Steve-O, because I'm about to send this to you. Yeah, we will keep coming back. We hope you do too.
Yeah, bro. Keep coming. I'll keep coming.
Yes,
Love
sir.
you, bro.
Love you too.